company? That's a really interesting question because I've not always won properly with it. Probably one of the company names I'm most proud of is one that turned out to not be right, and cause a lot of problems for my partner whose company it was first. But to me, the company needs a couple of things, and it. So number one, it starts with what is the company, and there were some old school ways of naming companies that don't apply so much anymore. The classic one was plumbers, lawyers, people you call in emergency situations used to compete to be the first listing in the phone book. So that's why there's A1 plumbing, A triple A to A, all of these things, because what they were trying to do was be when you're like, ah, shit, it's flooding, and you go through. They're the very first thing, and you would dial it. Okay, nobody buys phone books anymore, but that used to be a part of it. Is those sorts of things. So, but it brings about how do people use the name of your company? What is the name of a company? And there's lots of things to it. So the name of your company can tell people what it is that you do. Plumbers, electricians like to have plumber or electrician in the name of what they do because it's a standard of telling people what it is that you do. If you look at the most powerful brand names in existence, those names don't tend to have anything to do with what they do. Coke, Apple, Microsoft does, because a software company always was a software company. Ford, so there's your name, so your name comes in. I've always thought, I've never named a company after me, and I've owned multiple companies. I've owned a string of companies. I've never named one after me. There are times for doing that, though. A piece of it for me is knowing that you can lose access to your name that way. It's risky. Probably the most famous business story I know of that is Warren Miller Ski Productions. Warren Miller did, when I was in high school in the late 80s, as a skier, the Warren Miller ski movies every year were like, they were an event. They were part of the ski season. It was when the Warren Miller movie was ready to roll out that told you the season was about to open. So we all looked forward to it as this huge thing. And he had captured the core of what skiers thought of ourselves. And so if you go back and watch Ski Country, that's my favorite. If you watch Warren Miller Ski Country, if you go back to that, that's in the pinnacle of what Warren Miller was. The thing was he got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually he ends up getting an offer to sell his production company. He sells his production company, and he sells his production company as Warren Miller Productions, or whatever the name is. So his name goes with it, and his voice, because a key to the way the Warren Miller movies worked is the shots were always backed up by him narrating. It was because he started with nothing. He just started him going to the slopes, shooting movies, editing it himself, everything. He did it that way. And he has this great voice, and it's a very British sort of comedy by American standards. It's kind of this dry sort of, but it was hilarious and all of that. And it became a Warren Miller ski movie. That's what it was built of. It was great shots of skiing in the real world backcountry, it might be on mountain, or all these sorts of things. It had great stunts, so it had the big ski stunts of the day, the best skiers doing that sort of stuff. It had kind of blooper reel sort of stuff of people falling down and all these sorts of things, and all of it tied together by Warren Miller's voice. Well, the deal wasn't very good. The contracting wasn't very good. And he fell out with the people who bought the company. And so he got to the point where he refused to voice over the shows. And as I hear it, he was even in hoping that was going to ruin what they'd become. The problem was is they owned all of the footage from before, and so today there are still Warren Miller production ski movies today with Warren Miller's voice behind them without Warren Miller involved, because they're re-editing his old voiceovers to make him say whatever they want him to say. And Warren Miller now, at some point, I don't not up on it today, but he started his own movie company after that, doing ski movies, and he was precluded from using his name or his voice in his new movies. And so there's a danger to that. There's a danger to those sorts of things. But yes, your name is a piece of it, especially because lots of businesses exist around the reputation of the person who's there. There are lots of things you buy, those sorts of things that are bought entirely on the reputation of the person who's selling it to you. Jewelry is a great example. One of my business partners, he and his dad have a jewelry store, and it's entirely built on reputation. Can you recognize a diamond from a fake? Most people can't. And so one's worth $20 and one's worth thousands of dollars, and you're trusting this person to have sold you the right one, and it comes down to, do you trust this person? Do you believe this person? And so your name can be a very powerful tool there, because that's what you're buying, is you're buying the reputation of the person who's doing it. And those can turn into giant things too. You know, whether you look at Cartier or something like that, the name can become a brand type thing as well. I think, for me, I like the name of the company to give you some sense of who they are, some sense of the flavor, the culture, of a company. Now, and it's a chicken or the egg sort of thing. Apple, what does Apple mean by itself? They built something and made the name mean that. Oh, by the way, Apple was when I first started being aware of the brand and a big thing, Macintosh was another Apple name, a breed of Apple. Macintosh was the big name. Apple became the big name over time. So it's an interesting one. It's what are you doing with it, and it's definitely harder. I think it matters in how competitive is the market that you're in. If you're blazing the way in a brand new world, you can let the product lead and throw any name you want on it, and the name becomes something if you succeed. If you become a big deal, now you've turned the name into something. If you're in a competitive market where and you're trying to find your own space within it, now the name means something else. I hope I'm getting better at naming companies over time. Honestly, working with Cy and the name of his company is one of the ones I feel just the most good about, because it just fit. His company is Blackbird. I guess I'm part of it too, because we've got the Blackbird Truck Center, separate company, but they are partnered together. And the Blackbird idea, and we're doing some branding with it, and we use kind of a ghost image of the Blackbird airplane, and I listen to Beatles all the time, so the Blackbird songs in it, all of that feel is there, and the size company, the wrap company, has a lot of fun to it. Even though a lot of what we do is, I mean, they're killing themselves wrapping buses right now. That's not the most fun thing in the world, but we get to do cool stuff with cars. We, get race cars, and we've been wrapping parts of dragsters lately, and the people who own dragsters are passionate about it. We become a part of that and get a part of that life. And the whole Blackbird thing has kind of this fun, but it's fun, it's got attitude to it, but it also has gravitas, it has weight to it, and so it says those sorts of things. And so it's trying to figure out what do you want to do with it. and so it's, to me, in starting up a company, that's some of the most fun stuff. It has a difficult side to it too. I'm not going to go entirely into that. If you're picking the name for a company, there are a bunch of legal aspects you need to think about. In this day and age, you got to care about what is the web address going to be, and things like that. Can I trademark it? These sorts of things, and that can be hugely expensive in the long run. If you're in a place where you're starting a company that's going to land in the world really big, what I mean by that is some companies are not small on day one. Let's take Tesla for instance. Tesla did not start day one as a tiny company. It started as a big company because it was started by a billionaire who's going to throw huge weight behind it. If you look at Amazon Shipping as a company started huge in the world. Okay, in those sorts of situations, they have to be really careful with their naming. An example of it recently was the Tokyo Olympics. So the Olympic committees get formed for an Olympics in a specific place. So you get an organization, a company that's built around a single event. Well, they put out the very first time they rolled out their initial logos, they got sued immediately. Okay, they'd spent a lot of money developing it, and their own trademark attorneys had missed an existing trademark that looked like the one that they did, and they had not searched the right way or just wide enough. And what it was is it was Tokyo, so it was this interesting T logo. So it was a squared T logo. You could probably go out and find it. And they thought that they were in an empty space for that, and it turned out that there was a theater in London, I think it was, and I swear if you were trying to copy this London theater's logo, you couldn't do better than the Tokyo people did. By accident, landed on the same idea of how to do this logo. So it's things like that. So there are pitfalls to that. You've got to be careful. But to me, that's the nuts and bolts of how you do it. You can look that stuff up in a book. The fun part of it is, who am I? What do I want it to say about me? I'm going to be attached to this name every single day. I'm going to use the name every day. What does it say about me, and how do I feel about it? I can tell you the other side of it, that the real ugly side of naming a company is when the company doesn't work. And caring a lot about the names and stuff like that, and giving them up. And if you're going to be a business owner, failure is part of the game. And so that's a painful piece of it, because we sell our companies, we sell it, and you don't start a company if you don't believe it's a good idea. And so you believe in it, and so when for whatever reason it doesn't work, that's the pain. One of the painful pieces of it is losing a name that you used. To me, I don't have a good comparison. I'd say it's like losing a child, but that's BS. It's not that bad. It's just this sense of loss that you have, and one of the pieces of loss you have is a name you were associated with it that now you're not anymore. I have a race car that's had the name of multiple businesses on it, and it's painful to look back at photographs and see the old names, and the process of losing that as a piece of it. So, but no, I find picking a name for a company really fun. That to me is some of the fun creative side of it. And I've been blessed to get to name a lot of companies, because with consulting and teaching both, I've had a lot of opportunities to work with people who had no clue how to, they just couldn't come up with something to name the company. So I've got to help pick a whole lot of company names, and I find that really fun. I find it kind of a creative, it's like painting or something. You're making something out of nothing.